services? Then get in touch with our professional and friendly team to learn more about our range of custom and tailored services designed to suit your exact needs. Every one of our professionals have acquired years of experience, which ensures you get the very best. Our experienced staff is waiting to hear from you and to answer any specific questions that you may have on how we can meet your needs. Just ask for a consultation and let us prove our commitment to you as we promise to maintain the highest level of quality and commitment. Your satisfaction is our prime concern. So please, don't hesitate to get in contact with us and let us show you all the great options we have.
All right, and I believe that we are live here on Coalition Radio. My name is Zane Wolfang. My co-host is Professor Muggs.
Professor Muggs here in the building.
And this is the Give and Take. First off the bat, we want to say a big thank you to Pat Ford for hosting us during this time slot. The Give and Take will be a political talk show. I'm a Rhode Island native, born and raised, independent, not affiliated with a political party, although my personal politics do tend to run progressive. And I think the professor and I and Pat, we've each had our own conversations. And my impression is that we would like this show to be sort of high octane on passion and high octane on intellect, and to match guests that we're bringing on to the coalition audience and perhaps get an exchange of perspectives that's not currently happening in Rhode Island. Professor?
Yeah, I agree. So I am also from Rhode Island, and my political ideals lean more liberal, if you will. But yes, no, I am also a registered independent, no affiliation here. But I love my state, I love my city, and I love passionate talks about politics.
That's great, Professor. Pat, I want to open it up with you. This is something that we talked about a bit the other day. Obviously, sort of the moment in American history and in American reality right now is very much concerned with the anti-racism movement, with the Black Lives Matter movement, with the raw ugliness and truth of the civil rights struggle in America being brought back to the fore. Would you say that's fair?
Oh, of course, yeah.
Yeah, no, I would. It's. I'm old enough to have lived through a couple of gestations of this. I was born in the '60s, really towards the tail end of what you could consider the grandfather, for lack of a better term, the grandparents, if you will, of the American civil rights movement, particularly deep down south. I had the opportunity in the 60s as a very young person to travel down south and see a little bit of it firsthand, particularly in Florida, which was not nearly as diverse a community as it is now. We think of Florida as sort of a multicultural hub. 1965, 69 Florida was not. So it
I
is.
don't think I really do think of Florida as I don't know what I think of Florida as. That we could do a whole episode on that. But so actually, the reason I wanted to bring that up, and I'm glad you sort of alluded to this lived experience that you've had as an American citizen in previous iterations of civil rights struggle, is I want to talk about the media landscape. We could talk about it nationally, but I think there's plenty of things to talk about even within our state of Rhode Island, right? I want to talk about the media landscape and sort of the issue framing surrounding these anti-racism protests in Rhode Island. And part of the reason I'm keen to talk about that is that I know that you were out on Friday at the protest. Professor Muggs was out on Friday at the protest. I was out on Friday at the protest. And I think it's interesting how long the property damage trope lasted from last week. Yeah. I don't know if this is fair to say, but I see people kind of glossing over the fact that 10,000 people were out on the streets on Friday. Do you think that's an overstatement on my part, or do you think that the magnitude of that protest and the message of that protest have not been adequately focused upon in the Rhode Island media?
Well, there's two Rhode Island medias, if you will. There's the independent media, and folks like Bill Bartholomew and the folks at Uprise RI. I'd like to think myself.
Bill's out there.
Yep, and
Is that Steve Alquist?
Steve Alquist is a fabulous representative of what independent media should be standing for. Dr. Luis Daniel Munoz hosts a show here. He was there, and he spent a little bit of time with Bill Bartholomew. So if you look at those folks, including myself, we were.
RIPR was out there. RIPR and Motif Magazine as well. I should mention them.
No, absolutely. So by and large, the people that we just talked about, I think what's fascinating, and I want your reflection on this, they were in the protest. They were not observers. They were marching alongside, inside, with friends, family, political allies, arm in arm, figuratively and literally in many cases, chanting in a marvelously organized event that focused.
Maybe pause you, Pat. Professor. Sorry, Pat. Sorry. Yeah, sorry.
Oh, okay.
I want to hold on to that thought and come back. Sorry to cut in
that's
there.
cool.
Keep going.
All right, so you had the indie media was in the protest, immersed in it, involved in it, and the conventional media was the way the State House is designed. It was almost like they were on the drawbridges and on the castle walls, looking down into the moat of the great unwashed, which was all of us. And I even teased them a little bit, because I said, why not go down and join it, get a feel for it? How can you report on something that you're not in the middle of? And the looks they gave me, my friend, wow, they wanted no part of that. But that's my reflection on the difference between indie media and the newscasters, the Channel 10s, the Channel 12s, the Channel 6s. So, I'm sorry, go ahead, buddy.
Go ahead. Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment of what was going on from what I saw in the moat. It was very well worded. That's exactly how it felt. Battle of Helm's Deep over there, but it was a little baffling to see the mainstream media, if you will, kind of just focusing on what they could get an angle on, what angles they could get to make it look good on the nightly news. And the angle I wanted to, that kind of upset me was of our governor praying with. We have Naira here.
Oh, perfect. I was just asking you if he received the link. All right, cool. We're gonna bring him on in about 5 minutes.
Sure.
I don't know if you're in direct contact. You want me to tell him?
He can hear us on the show.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, I just texted him as well, and then I've been talking to Amanda as well. She said she couldn't get the link, but I said that it was resent, so I asked her to check that, and we'll see. Hopefully, she'll be checking in before 9:15. Sorry, anyway, Professor.
Yeah, no, it's the image I'm talking about was a picture of our governor holding hands and or just praying on the steps of the State House. In front of a crowd that wasn't really captured, probably of about 200. But the crowd of 10,000, she was nowhere to be found there.
Can I add on to that?
I feel one moment. I feel like that photo and the photo op of our president came at a very opportune time. One, they were both using, religion to gain support for whatever it is that they were trying to gain support for that night, whether it be an image of peace or some sort of victory that their idea worked. But to see that both were using religion and, these protests at the same time, it was just, I don't know. I drew that.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought of, although I've been, as you know, and Pat knows, I've been living outside of the United States for the better part of the last certainly on and off. I've been back and forth, but I've been outside the U.S. for about 5 years now, living in the Middle East primarily. I'm not so tuned in to the local media yet, even though I now am on local media. But I wasn't really reading WJR stuff every day when I was in northern Iraq. I just was doing other stuff. But it was interesting. I had organized a bunch of other white allies, I guess is the term that we've been using, to people who wanted to get involved in the protest, but weren't sure how, weren't sure what was going on. This is the Black Lives Matter movement, and Black Lives Matter is also an official organization with chapters. But in reality, this is, to me, a popular uprising, right? 10,000 people out in the streets. It was like at 4:22 p.m., like there was nobody out. And at 4:30, like thousands of people were descending from the east side, coming from across the west, like from everywhere, like locusts.
All directions. It was great.
So and some of our guests, I think, are going to speak about how this, young people are actually turning themselves into organizations and organizing as we speak, because it was literally just such a groundswelling of popular sentiment. But getting back to the story about allies before we get Nairu on in a few minutes, we brought about 15 people or so, and a lot of people were quite worried about violence. I was quite worried. I thought that I was going to get beat up by the police a couple times. I thought I was, maybe going to get chewed on by a dog. There were points where we didn't know it was going to happen. But a lot of my friends and a lot of my white friends left early, and they said they were going to. And there's no judgment in this, in the telling of this tale about who stayed and who. This isn't a battle. This is our human rights that we're trying to work towards. I don't want to forget where I'm going with this. Okay, here. So some of them left early, and then they saw the governor out when she finally came to address the protesters. And one of my friends, who is very much a staunch ally of this cause and is vocal and has been published in Go Local Province, advocating for Black Lives Matter, said, "Oh, it seemed like everybody was begging for Gina, and then when she came, they left. They didn't want to listen to her." And I don't think he meant it like that. But I'm wondering if that's the impression that a lot of older and a lot of white viewers in Rhode Island who may have tuned into the evening news got, was like, and I just want to make it clear that 10,000 people were not begging for nobody's waiting to hear Gina Raimondo's brilliant take on racism in America. She was expected to be there because it's her job to represent and serve the people. And she should know that, because we both graduated from LaSalle Academy, and the paradigm of their educational model is supposed to be leadership through service.
I mean, it's this is a political home run, if you will. Just march with the people.
Clear the dogs away and march.
Clear the dogs away.
And she came after the vigil. She came after the whole week. Like, we knew there was a protest last Saturday. We've been planning for 6-7 days. I'm a janitor. I knew there was a protest. I think Gina knew there was a protest, right? She didn't come out. We did 8 minutes and 46 seconds of silence for George Floyd. And she came out after that. How symbolic of just being so tone deaf and so too late and so inattentive and irresponsible regarding the moment and the needs of your community. That's how I felt. And I wondered if people just saw Gina on the news and they said, "Oh, the protesters didn't even want to listen to her." Like, she had ample time. And I'm hoping she shows face and engages in some serious dialogue in some of the future events that Amanda is going to bring up, because I think that, I don't think that her coming out at that point on Friday night really counts as attending anything.
No, not
Let me, as someone who's been a Gina watcher now for about 6 or 7 years, and who's been an activist in the town for probably about 20, Gina, as far as Friday night goes, what we call live shotted. She made sure that there was a backdrop, a carefully framed backdrop that was appropriately multicultural and appropriately on the fly, so that she could take that video to her friends in Boston, her friends in New York, and say, "See, I'm in tune with the majority political representation that is Providence." And in doing so, the way she did it, exposed herself or re-exposed herself for the fraud that she is. She wasn't there Thursday for the press conference with Anastasia Williams. I was, and it was a remarkable event for two things. Number one,
I was there as well.
Yep, that's where we met, actually. But the list of the list of issues that Anastasia raised was incredibly comprehensive. And then what's also remarkable was the input of the young people who were at the press conference. But the one question that we all had, as Nick Mattiello said,
Amanda, who will be on the show today, by the way.
Exactly. But Nick Mattiello, as he sat there awkwardly absorbing the barbs, well aimed and well framed by folks from the younger folks from the majority community in this city. But where was Gina? She's been a complete no-show for all of this, and I wouldn't expect great things from her going forward unless it's to her political advantage. Tone deaf is possibly the best expression. I will call her what I believe is she's an amoral human being. But Professor, you're a longtime resident too. What's your thought after 6 years of Gina Raimondo of her, how she's paid attention to the needs of what I call the urban core?
Oh, it's been a joke. It's been a joke. I've I voted for Gina the first time around. She was treasurer to the state for a long time, and I thought that she did do a good job in that role. I wasn't too in tune with the political world of Rhode Island. I was, a new voter and excited by the world of politics, and that was who I wanted to see what direction we could go. Maybe this could change. Maybe the mass gentrification of neighborhoods and the crazy corruption and BS that's been going on in Rhode Island politics would finally come to a stop, and it didn't. I first heard about the hypocrisy of her cannabis policies, and that was, I just couldn't even believe that half the things I was hearing was legal. But yeah, after 6 years,
that's like a whole episode. That's a whole.
Yeah,
we can do a deep dive on those issues.
But as far as my overall perception, I thought Friday she would show up and really just try. I was hoping for even just an effort, and there was nothing. As I think it was worded very well. An amoral human being.
Hey, so, and now while we're on this, right? Professor Muggs is a longtime Providence resident. So is our first guest, Nairu Ben. I'm wondering if we can possibly get him patched into the conversation. I think it's a good point to add another perspective.
Yeah, I believe he just dropped off. Folks, if you're just joining us, this is really an inaugural episode of a new effort that we're putting up on the air, and it's going to be, it's sort of like a reflection of the life on the streets of Providence itself. It's we're going to patch people in and out. We're going to get folks who are intimately involved in the issues of the city, the real city, the city that belongs to the people who are on this show and listening to the show, not the city that belongs to the wolite. And it's a work in progress, and I think what we're trying to do tonight is frame the show going forward. Zane Wolfang and Professor Muggs are the hosts. Folks know me just because this is. Oh, we got somebody.
No, not yet.
Oh, okay. So we people know me because I guess I'm the proprietor here. Okay. But Professor, I love the idea of doing a show on cannabis. It's funny. I dug out of the archives my testimony the night that Gina Raimondo attempted to place a tax on medical cannabis, which is to this day the most profane act that I've ever seen a politician attempt. The notion that you would tax the sick and dying on a medicine that they don't even get coverage for in their health care was just an obscenity that rests with me to this day. And it is probably the biggest underlying reason why I oppose every single breath, every single thing that woman stands for. Under the category of terrible human beings, she would be it. If you could reach out to him again, I
wish you could see Professor Muggs' face right now. I knew you guys would get along.
I'm elated to hear that. It's one of those things I can't believe this happens out in the open, and she gets away with it. But right. Like Zane said, we could go into that on another episode.
I'm in some talks with some people to learn more about those issues as well. So I'm very excited. On the give and take here, we're all about passionate and intellectually based and factually based political conversation. But I'm working on a few investigative things as well. Mm-hmm. I'm not good with deadlines, so I like to work on stuff that's not so in tune with the frenetic modern news cycle. But I definitely have been working on some sources in the cannabis industry to figure out how to tell that tale in a way that's understandable to the layman.
Absolutely. It's got to be organic. I'm sorry?
Did we get Nairu back, or is he still working on it?
I don't see him back yet.
If you want to text him, maybe just to try the link again.
Yeah, I asked him to click the link again. He said he's working on it, so I'll keep an eye on that. But that's all right. Nairu and I are good friends, so if we have technical difficulties today, I can get him back on. I also wanted him on because I went to the rally at Burnside Park yesterday, which was sort of held in conjunction with the closed door Providence City Council budget meeting.
Right.
I'm not a Providence resident, so basically my understanding is that there was a Zoom digital conference about the Providence budget.
Yeah,
I believe
I clocked into that, and that was.
Can you speak on that?
As a travesty. So I was told 5:30 is when it began. I set up my phone and I clicked on the link that was in the Providence City Council website. When I clicked the link, it sent me to a Zoom with a projected, image saying.
Bring it right
up. Nope. I thought I did. He might have dropped off again.
Well, I'm sorry, Professor. What was the image?
The image was it said, click this link below to go to a different format. This one has been filled up. I know that there were people with their virtual hand raised to, either say or ask some sort of legitimate question pertaining to the city budget draft for 2021. When the new link popped up, everyone who had their digital hand raised was now skipped over and replaced with bigots. People yelling anti-Semitic and racist slurs. I know Councilwoman Matos had asked multiple times to shut this down. We can't give these people a platform. And the speaker, I can't pronounce his last name, and I don't want to butcher it. It's Iguzo. Pat, maybe you.
The speaker of this, or the chairman of the city council.
Yeah.
Igliozzi.
Igliozzi, that's his name. Yeah.
Would not shut down the platform, and each person they called, it was just another racist or anti-Semitic rant. And there was a Q&A part where you could type in your question and or answer, and or question and or comment. And even in that, people were just, filling it with N-words and all sorts of stuff. So it was a disaster.
Professor, can I pause you for 1 second just to speak on the technical difficulties? Both of my guests, one, the link's not working for her. Nairu, I'm not sure what's happening with him, but they're both asking about calling in now. Do we just want to try and reschedule them for next week? Or is there a way that we can get them to call in?
They can call in right at the call-in number there.
One at a time.
Okay. One at a time. We can bring them on one at a time. Absolutely.
Yeah. So have Nairu call in first at the 401-205-3738.
3738. Call in now. I'm telling him to call him now. Obviously, we can only have him on for about 10 minutes because I really want to give Amanda a platform as well for the last 10 minutes of the show.
Yeah, we can go as long as
that number.
Yeah, we can go as long as.
Okay, so is it all right if we go a little bit overtime?
No.
If we go like maybe 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Is that cool for you, Professor?
Cool.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Pat, for understanding. We'll have Nairu call in now. And I'm going to send the number to Amanda as well. So thank you guys for working with me. Okay, so, and I want to build as well off what Professor Muggs is saying here. And the whole point of the Zoom meeting was supposed to be that the public would get to comment on the prioritization of different line items in the budget, right? And the public comment forum like the city council meeting wasn't hijacked. The public comment aspect of the budget meeting was hijacked, right? So then they had the meeting closed door the next day, and they had a rally. The people had a rally separately at Burnside to talk about the budget in kind of vague terms. There was no public comment at the budget meeting, and the police were defending the building where the city hall was against the potential of the rally at Burnside becoming protesters at the budget meeting because they knew that the people were being denied input into the budget, right?
Absolutely.
Right. So now the budget meeting has happened. I don't know what happened in the meeting. Do you?
I don't know.
Pat, do you? Does anybody?
No. It was again, here's the media narrative taking over the real story. The media narrative, of course, obsessed over and I love your reaction to this term. The media in this town wallows in what I call outrage porn. So you had this astonishing public presence on Friday evening in a peaceful manner that guys, I'm a lot older than you. I'm just going to put it out there. I have attended rallies as diverse as ACT UP rallies in New York City during the HIV crisis. I attended the war moratoriums in 1968 as a very young person with my father. I've gone to concerts at Central Park with over 1 million people in them. I've marched hand in hand with 10 people at a time to stand outside of a proposed baseball stadium that would have sucked $100 million out of the working poor of Rhode Island. So I've attended just about everything you can imagine, and quite frankly, I was choked up with emotion at the spirit and the feeling of unanimity at this event. Yet at the same time, the only thing that this media in town could obsess over was the potential for violence. It was like a bad motorcycle movie from the 50s where they're going to take your daughters. It's just astonishing.
Well, like, I mean, I know a guy who has a store downtown, and his store was totally smashed up, and everything in it was taken out. Like, even people came and brought duffel bags and just picked out shelves.
Wait, we have a caller on the line, by the way. What's your name? Who's this on the line?
Hello, my name is Nairu.
Hey, great. Join the party. Join the party.
Welcome, Nairu.
Hey, thank you for the invite. Thank you for having me up.
All right.
Hey, I'm glad we got you on the phone, Nairu. We're actually just speaking about yesterday's event at Burnside Park, and my co-host Professor Muggs was speaking on how the Zoom meeting the day prior was sort of a disaster. Yes, I know that you got up and spoke.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great. Can you hear Zane as well?
Okay, great. Yeah.
Not right now. Hello?
Yeah, I'm with you. Hang on a second.
Can you hear me?
Nairu, can you hear Zane at all? Zane,
I cannot hear
Nairu,
Zane.
can you?
No, he can't. So hang on the line for a second. Bear with me.
Let's see.
Zane, we'll get him on in a second. Zane, go ahead.
Yeah, as soon as we get everyone, what I want to ask him is he spoke at the rally yesterday, and I'm not sure how heavily involved he wasn't organizing it or not. But what he spoke about specifically that I thought was powerful and I thought was not heard at the city council meeting was his experiences being profiled and targeted by Providence police. This is a guy that I've known since he was in 9th grade. We went to LaSalle Academy together. We played sports together. He's always been involved in the community. He's always been involved in sort of positivity and conscious creative work. Right. And I've had this conversation with a few friends who say like, people act in a certain way, dress in a certain way.
Oh,
Nairu, can you hear me?
Zane, can you? Let's do a roll call, Paul.
Yeah, I'm working on it.
And I have an echo right now.
I can hear Nairu every time he speaks. I just feel he can't hear me when I speak.
Right. And Nairu, can you hear Zane?
Nairu, can you hear me speaking?
No, not at the moment. I cannot.
Okay.
All right. Well, can you ask Pat? Can you ask Nairu to speak a little bit about?
Yeah, go ahead, Zane. What was the question? I'll ask.
Yeah, can you let Nairu know that I'm going to relay a question to him as long as we're playing telephone?
Yeah, we're going to play a little telephone here. I'm going to relay a question to you from Zane, and you can run with it. So, Zane, go right ahead.
Yeah, and I think Professor Muggs may speak on this as well, if he chooses to. But I think what it would have been quite valuable, hard for a lot of people to hear, but important for people who are deciding budget priorities, is the experience that young people, particularly young people of color, particularly young Black people, particularly young Black men, have of being targeted and racially profiled and harassed by Providence police, and it doesn't have to do with where you went to school or how you dress or how you speak. It has to do with being Black. And Nairu did speak yesterday about some of his experiences being profiled by the Providence police. I was wondering if he could speak on that and how that affects budget priorities and sort of political initiatives.
All right. Did you catch any of that, Nairu?
No, I did not hear it.
Okay, fine. So I guess what Zane wants to know, and I'd love to hear this as well. The experience of growing up black in Providence, regardless of where you went to school, and I'm going to ask you too about the Jump Out Boys, but the daily harassment that could take place if you were in and around downtown Providence, if you were over on the west or south end, or you found yourself on the north end, perhaps after school, and
Probably
and really what that meant to you. And I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Representative Anastasia Williams. How many times did you have to have that hard conversation with your parents about how to act around the police?
Wow. First thing I want to say is it's a very important question, and definitely conversations that need to be had all the time, because that is one aspect that is rarely spoken about, and if it is spoken about, it's only spoken about amongst ourselves, within our communities, and amongst our families. Growing up, just as a black person, as an African American, and especially in Providence, Rhode Island, you're taught to, for lack of a better term, not fear the police, but be in fear, just in case, be prepared for the worst. You speak to them properly, no profanity, don't disrespect them. Kind of almost as if you're kind of always almost in the wrong, though you did not do anything. So just make sure to stay out of trouble. Always stay out of trouble. Though you're a good kid, but just making sure your parents are always emphasizing staying out of trouble. Like I said, just because they've dealt with and experienced and seen things that we have yet to deal with or experience during our time. Also, just understanding what it means to be a black person and hearing police sirens, right, and seeing those red and blue lights. For us, it's trauma. For us, we don't view it as the cavalry is coming in or help is on the way. Even if you're innocent, you feel guilty. Even if you've been pulled over, you're automatically thinking, "Dang, what did I do wrong? Do I have a tail light out?" Even though your car may have just been inspected. So there's a trauma that comes with that. There's a fear that comes with just interactions with the police. Specific instances on my own, racial profiling, prejudices. At different times, I have been stopped just because I fit the description, just because I was black, just because I was in the wrong place or the right place at the wrong time. And one instance in particular is I was walking on my way to a friend's house to go to the gym from a CCRI class from downtown on Broad Street. And I was surrounded by 12 squad cars, 12 cruisers. It took 12 squad cars and 12 cruisers to stop me and detain me for an hour, dump my backpack on the ground, hold me there, ask me questions, just for them to tell me that I'm being detained because I fit the description and I'm not the guy who they're looking for. Send me on their way. Held for hours and told me maybe I shouldn't be wearing what I'm wearing if I didn't want this to happen to me. Leaving confused, leaving upset, right?
Was this the
so many
police?
other scenarios. This is Providence Police. Yeah.
Oh, good.
All right, we can actually all hear each other. Keep going there. This is.
Can I ask Professor Moore, do you have any thoughts about some of the we're talking about here?
Yeah, no,
I'm
I've
sorry.
experienced everything. I grew up on the east side on Fifth Street. Over there, it's like a knit black community. Police always in the area. Police always, jacking people. I've had money taken from me. And don't get me wrong, I have every single one of these. I'm not here to put people on blast. I'm just here to tell my experience. Providence Police are the biggest gang in the city. That they are criminal. I've been stopped for walking 5 times in my own neighborhood in 1 year. 3 times from the same cop.
So at this point, he knows who you are.
Yeah, no, it's just to mess with,
Right. I want to ask a question. I have been pulled over and let go multiple times. And in each of those instances, of course, you're nervous when the police pull you over. You know, like, whether where's my license registration, am I, right? But I almost had like an expectation that it would be okay. Can you relate to that at all? Like, pulling up and you be like, it's going to be no big deal.
I'll let Nairu answer that first.
Yeah, hello. So the question was, can I relate to the feeling of feeling like safe and that everything will be all right at a traffic stop if I'm pulled over?
Yeah. Do you feel like I've felt after, like, especially the first time being pulled over and just being expected to stop and get my stuff, like, you let me go, and I'm like, oh, like I kind of got built into my expectations of dealing with the police. Like, do you ever always immediately like your intention, or do you ever like, I don't know how to phrase the question. Can you relate to my normalized experience of zero threat from the police based on a situation?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yep. I can understand that. Yeah. Yeah. No. I don't think I've. And if I have not felt a threat, it's only because of my own confidence, my own knowledge. But I feel like I've always felt a little uneasy and always felt a threat whenever I was pulled over by the police.
100% no. There's never been a time where safe. There's never been a time where I've seen a cop and felt. And that's not just trying to like, man. Better phrase, lick their chops when they see black kids in a car. I've been asleep in the back seat while my white friend's been pulled over. He was driving and they were like, oh, didn't even ask him for his ID, didn't ask him for anything. Flashlight in the back seat. What's he doing back there? What's his name? Not even directly asking me, not even directly talking to me.
Like, speaking to the white friend.
Speaking to the white friend. And this is in Providence. I'm not talking about you know Georgia right now. You know what I mean? This is Providence. So no, never felt safe. And I do want to sort of relate his about his experience as a youth in Providence and an activist in Providence, and his experiences with police relate to current political regarding police budget. You know, in your opinion, or based on your interactions with other young people, do you think about this idea of defunding the police and refunding the community? Has there been conversations where you would like to see some money and go?
Nehru, can you hear us at all? Are you still in on the conversation?
The conversation, the call keeps going in and out a little bit.
Yeah. So I
caught part of what I caught. Part of what I caught was how could we relate the things that are going on in the current times? Could you say the question again?
Well, part of the question too is yeah, in terms of defunding the police budget. You're obviously paying attention politically. What are your thoughts on defunding the police?
Okay. I mean, so we understand that the police, especially in Providence, they have a high police budget. They clearly are overqualified. We clearly understand the history of the police, these structures that were put in place to literally harm and hurt people of color. These police were given the power and given the tools to hurt and to harm people of color and black people, and they are using that power and that force. So I do believe in defunding the police as a first step to abolishing the police and adding non-threatening, not task force, but civil representatives to call to civil duties and civil actions. I do understand that the mayor has the power, and I actually was on a Zoom call with the mayor right before this phone call
with Mayor Jorge Alorza.
Just talking about ways that he can or ways that he can use his power if there was, let's just say, a bill to increase police budgeting, and if it was to come across his table, using his veto power to not pass that, not sign off on that, where he would reallocate these funds, where he would start, what is his process and his outlook, and him mentioning that that he wants to reimagine the police force and the Providence police force. So just kind of what that'll look like, and kind of him mentioning not having a badge and a gun. So like I said, though I believe, and a lot of people believe, that these structures were put in place to hurt people, I do feel like defunding and police reform, as well as protocols for psychological and mental evaluations of their police officers to be implemented and put in place, different ways to hold officers accountable, but ultimately making sure that more laws don't get passed to reinforce and reassure these structures that were put in place to hurt us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no,
I
would have to agree. At this point in time, it just strikes me as someone who spends a lot of time in Providence. This station is located in Providence, and I've spent a lot of time on the streets of Providence and doing a range of work. One of which we'll talk about that in the weeks coming forward. But I think you'll be amused by some of it. I was essentially a cab driver as a second job in the city of Providence for a couple of years.
Hey, can you guys hear me right now?
Yeah, we can hear you fine. But
okay.
I think
I just want to
go ahead, buddy.
I want to wrap up with Nairobi so that we can get Amanda Toussaint on here to talk about some upcoming events. But I did just want to ask Professor Muggs if he wanted to build on anything. Nairobi about defunding the police, about moving towards abolishing the police. One thing I noticed, I believe Nairobi was speaking about meeting with Mayor Jorge Elorza of Providence. It may have been obvious to some listeners and maybe not to others. When Nairobi said he was talking to the mayor, I believe that he was referring to the mayor of Providence, Jorge Elorza. And he used this term, reimagining the police. It strikes me that Jorge Elorza doesn't really need to, do a weekend acid trip and reimagine society. Like, he needs to look at some of the talking points of the NAACP, the ACLU, the Black Lives Matter movement, look at cities like Minneapolis that have already entirely defunded their department, Newark, New Jersey, and Camden, New Jersey, which have experimented with much more progressive police reform than other cities. Is Jorge, when you talk to Jorge Elorza, when people meet with Gina Raimondo, what are the concrete proposals that we're demanding here? What are they willing to give?
Hello.
I don't want Jorge Elorza to reimagine the police. I want him to take them out of schools, for instance, right? Like, he doesn't need to imagine anything. He just needs to get the cops out of the schools. Do you see what I'm getting at?
Now, did you get that, Nero?
No.
Okay.
I cut in. I couldn't hear anything.
Okay, so the question that, and we'll work on during the week, we'll work on some of these signals and how we can clean up the tech a little bit.
We have maybe Professor Muggs jump in
No problem at all.
on the proper internet.
Yeah, So as far as the police budget is concerned, I think there are a lot of steps that can be done. One, police getting out of schools. Two, I know it sounds crazy, but I just don't get why anyone who doesn't live in a neighborhood is allowed to police that neighborhood. There should be an initiative to just have those who are residents police where they're from. I think that my father, he's from Chicago, grew up there, and he told me stories where it was like, cops wouldn't arrest people. They would just bring them to their parents because they knew where they lived and they remember that community. And it was just a lot easier to do that. When you have someone from Tiverton, Coventry, Burrillville, places that are pretty traditionally racist and red, patrolling an inner city neighborhood in Providence, you're asking for trouble. That's just,
Right.
So, I think, Oh, go ahead, Pat.
I was going to say some of that comes from the fact that police are no longer required to live in the city they police in, and we've come full circle on that. There was a time when folks felt that police need to be one step removed from a community for their own lifestyle, if you will. That clearly that ship has sailed. That doesn't work anymore. If you're not connected to the community, that's a great idea. You just have to have that sort of social, mental connection, it's understanding too. I mean, how is it possible for people to police people of radically different cultures and not want to be involved in those cultures to understand them? It's doesn't really make any common sense, And
I like the professor's tendency. We talk quite a bit off the radio, obviously, as well. Since this is our first time on the radio, you could presume that most of our conversations occur off of it. But I like that the professor is always coming with very pragmatic takes on how to transform society. Like, nobody wants a moderate Democrats, tepid reimagined society speech. Like, at least Gina and Jorge didn't wear, kente stoles, when they promised the Black community nothing. But we're talking about pragmatic action, and I think that our next call-in, I'm sorry that Nairu and Amanda couldn't be with us on video today, but I'm sure both of them will be back in future episodes. But our next caller is really involved in organizing some young people and coordinating with the students and really trying to generate some specific policy proposals from the mouths of the youth. Before we get Amanda on, I believe she's on hold right now. I do want to say a big thank you. Okay, cool. I want to say a big thank you to Nairu Ben for coming on with us today.
I heard the beat, guys. Hello.
Hi, Amanda. Hey, I'm going to introduce you. I want to say thank you to Nairu real quick, and then we'll do it with you. Okay, Amanda?
I think we have everybody on. Let's, if I could, let me just do a quick sound check. Amanda, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, can you guys hear me?
I can hear you. Zane, can you hear her okay? Okay.
I can. I was just in the middle of saying something, yeah.
And then, Nairu, you're still on the line with us?
Yes, still here, yes.
Okay. And can you hear Zane?
No, I cannot hear Zane.
Okay.
So I can hear Amanda.
Okay.
Pat, can you ask Nairu to give himself an outroduction? Can you ask Nairu to just tell everyone his name again and what he does for just like a brief 30-second outro, and then we can pop it up a little bit.
All right, cool. Nairu, we're going to go with Amanda for just a little bit, but maybe if you can spend 30 seconds or a minute just reintroducing yourself to our audience, where you're active, and how folks can get in touch with you, and just give us a little sense of some of the things you do.
And say goodbye.
All right, so my name is Nairu. I'm born and raised in Providence, Rhode Island. I'm Liberian, first generation. I'm a poet, hip-hop artist, entrepreneur. My efforts, I feel like I'm no different than anybody else. Went down to the protests just to be a part of a cause, and the efforts to help make change, and just seeing the lack thereof of leadership. And so I just wanted to take initiative, step forward, one of many people that stepped forward to do their part in the community, and making sure that my people are educated, and make sure we're arming ourselves with education, and sticking together, unifying each other in the efforts to make the world and where we live a better place. To say the least, you can follow me on Twitter at NYUANRU or Instagram at NYRU in many different ways. They can contact me on my email, nice2hot16@gmail.com. And I'm sure you'll see me around the city. Very approachable. Let's connect.
All right.
Thank you again for the opportunity and the time. Pat and Zane, thank you, guys.
Yeah, listen, thank you. And absolute pleasure to sort of virtually meet you. So thanks for joining us tonight and working through with us. Okay.
Awesome, Pat. Can we jump right into having?
Yeah. I think we might have crossed paths, but I'm definitely looking forward to meeting you again in person.
Okay. Thank you so much, buddy. Now Amanda is going to join us. Amanda, maybe you can give us an introduction. I'm going to then turn the show back over to Zane.
Absolutely. So I do go by Brooklyn. Amanda is my real name. However, Brooklyn is my nickname. I'm 21 years old, living in the Providence, Rhode Island area. I am the founder of ProvZ, stands for Progressive Reform Overrides Violence, and Generation Z is leading it. Kind of an activist. Got the job the day I was born Black. I'm out there in the community, making sure I'm trying to facilitate as much as possible, trying to take a leadership role, making sure that there's the right voices on the platform. Also stressing that the voices that need to be heard are definitely the youth that are actually out there living the direct results of the systemic racism. So I'm all about the youth, all about change.
Zane,
awesome. Amanda,
Go ahead.
Thank
buddy.
you so much, Pat.
And really quick before
Amanda,
we turn it over to Zane, if you're looking to get connected to me, you can follow me on Instagram at The Real Toussaint. And Toussaint is spelled Toussaint. Twitter is also the same, except after TH, there's no E, and then Real Toussaint.
All right, Amanda, thank you so much. And we'll definitely give you a little bit of time at the end of the show as well to reintroduce yourself, to remind people who you are and what you do, and to get people in touch with you, right? This is definitely your platform. That's part of the reason we're here. So we'll definitely circle back to
Pat, I'm not sure
to get
if
in touch with you.
Zane is speaking, but I can't hear him.
We're running into the Zane. We're running into the same tech issue. For some reason, in the beginning, you can hear, and then your signal drops off. So unfortunately, we got to do a little bit more of that tag, and then we'll get together off air in the next day or so and figure out the tech. But so I guess you have to ask me questions, and I'll toss them to. Go ahead, buddy.
Yeah, we can coordinate that. Pat, can you ask Amanda about her new organization's sort of goals, about what they're doing in the community, some events they have coming up, their political goals, and their relationship with some of the students in Providence who've been protesting?
Excellent. Amanda, I guess if you can lay out for us some of the goals you've got with your organization, particularly working with the students and the variety of opportunities to protest.
Definitely. Working with, Generation Z mostly, the main goal right now is change. We're kind of tired of hearing officials saying, they're working on it. We kind of just want the change now. Very clearly, I know we've been heard, no justice, no peace. And we're definitely out there. We're definitely shaking the streets. I think on the top of our list right now is defunding the police and refunding the community. And that means divest and invest. Take the money from the police and put it back in the community where it belongs. Where it's going to actually benefit our people, where we actually have a chance. I think second on our list right now would be police reform, demilitarizing the police, which kind of goes hand in hand with defunding them. That's definitely something that we're stressing right now. Citizens shouldn't have to, be in fear of people who are protecting and serving them. And then obviously we need better education. Our public schools need to demonstrate what an actual community is, especially a community that has been showing up and out for each other. We shouldn't have kids that are going to be going back to schools that are up to par. We need better jobs in the community. We need more resources. There's more than enough money in Providence. Clearly, we see that off the proposed budget for the police in 2021. So we need some of that money, and we need it to come to us now. Excellent.
Zane?
Yeah, so I don't know if Professor Muggs knew this, but I did. If I'm correct, Brooklyn and Prov Z and some of these students have secured an audience with Governor Raimondo next week. Now, it's not clear to me if that's a good faith meeting on part of the governor, or if she's just trying to give these people a meeting to get them off her back. But I'm wondering, what are, how is Brooklyn feeling about this meeting coming up with Governor Raimondo, and what is Prov Z and Generation Z going to push for in this meeting, and how are they going to keep the pressure on Governor Raimondo now that they're getting some of this access?
Zane's been asking me, you've got a meeting coming up with the Governor Raimondo. What's your attitude about the sincerity of the meeting, and what's your strategy, and what do you hope to gain out of developing this working relationship with the governor? Are you optimistic, and what do you hope to walk away with?
We definitely do have a meeting coming up with the governor on the 16th. My attitude going in, and I think I speak for the team when I say this, we're pretty optimistic. Securing the meeting in the first place, we know obviously it shows she wants to sit down with us. We want to have an open discussion. We want to, make sure that our voices are actually being heard. I don't think it's going to be a completely, smiles all throughout conversation. There's going to be some hard truths and some even harder questions asked, but we're definitely there for the right purpose. And Gina's leading the people. She should have the same interest.
Zane?
Professor Muggs,
yeah,
do you have any questions?
I have a question for Amanda. So the events that took place on the 2nd, which were, storefronts were broken, squad car was burned. As someone who represents a group, against violence and whatnot, do you think that although it was destructive, it played its role in getting the governor and the mayor to start listening to people? Although, so what I'm asking, I guess, is even though clearly violence is condemned, breaking and destroying of properties is condemned by them. Does Brooklyn think that that they still played a role in getting our leaders to start paying attention?
Right. Like, did that, despite people's disagreements with those actions, do you think those actions pushed the cause forward? Right. Like, push the cause in the right direction.
So Brooklyn, and what Zane and Professor Muggs are asking, clearly your organization is opposed to violence at any level, despite the fact that, and this is my interjection, that there's been cultural violence appropriated on your folks for generations. So I appreciate that level of maturity. At the same point, Professor Muggs is asking, do you think that, and I'm paraphrasing here, do you think that the violence effectively forced Governor Raimondo and Mayor Elorza to come to the table, that this was simply something they couldn't ignore again?
Well, I want to start off by saying, while I do represent Prov Z, I wouldn't say that, I'm completely against violence. Mm-hmm. A riot is the voice of the unheard. So, like you just said, obviously, the governor and the mayor, it took a riot for them to address the Black Lives Matter movement and the efforts that the youth were putting forth. In a perfect world, we would love to peacefully protest all day, all night, get the community together, share some laughs, share some cries. We would love that. But at the end of the day, we see what works. We see what has worked in history. We see what has, always shaken the streets, shaken the table, and gotten the right people to speak up. And for some reason, it seems that violence is always the answer, as much as we don't want it to be. And that's why, again, in the name, progressive reform will override violence. Mm-hmm. We don't want violence. But at the same time, we don't want the message that if there's no justice, there will be no peace to be lost either. We're kind of at a point where Generation Z is leading this movement, and it's for a reason. Z is at the end of the alphabet, and this racial injustice, this not having our voices heard when this world is ours to live in, it ends here with us. So we want to stress completely, as long as the reform that is given is progressive and it's moving in the right direction at all times and for everyone, equality is just as important as equity. That's kind of what we're going for. And sometimes some of the reforms might not be all that peaceful. And I don't need to say that they're going to be violent, but there's some reform that may involve somebody getting their job taken. That's not necessarily peaceful, but it's going to be necessary. And those are the kind of reforms that we want. And of course, violence is never the answer. But if violence is the only thing that seems to be getting people to listen to us, where do we really go from there?
So in a real...
I have one more question.
Oh, sure, go ahead. No,
Pat, I have one more question.
Sure.
Yeah. I wanted to know from Brooklyn, there are a lot of questions circling right now as to what does someone do? And it's usually from the white community asking, what can I do during this time to be supportive? What can I do in this time, to be proactive? However, there are a lot of voices, as a Black man that I hear in the Black community of people of color who don't know what to do. What would she suggest as a youth leader, a leader in the city now, for someone of color who isn't necessarily in tune with, the political,
good question,
the political climate right now?
So Professor Muggs, Brooklyn, he's asking, I think, a pretty straightforward question. If you're folks in the white community right now are sort of in a quandary, and they're asking what they can do as allies in what is clearly the latest, and I believe you're right, the end game in opposition to the sort of violent racism, the violent economic racism that exists in the city today. But at the same token, so that's a separate area. But what would you suggest, as Professor Muggs is asking, to folks in the African-American community, people of color, in the majority city, that is Providence and the state of Rhode Island? What can they do to support the cause?
Right. I would say particularly people who feel disengaged.
That is a very straightforward question, and I have a straightforward answer. The fact that they're asking what they can do is part of the problem. They should know what we need at this point. We've mentioned it many times. We need our voices to be heard. We need for everyone to be out there fighting with us. Even if things get disorderly, that is not the only way that you can add to a protest or even a riot if it becomes one. There are so many ways to aid, whether passing out water, snacks, whether passing out first aid, just making sure people are okay, actually being out there to listen and not speak. There are so many ways to contribute to Generation Z fighting and battling this racial injustice. And I feel like at the end of the day, we're all connected. And if we're all connected, especially through social media, especially through the news, especially through our personal experiences, it shouldn't be this hard to realize that there is a community that is being hunted, that is being disproportionately killed, and that we need help. It's very clear. And if it's not clear, your household, your community is not talking about what they should be, and that's a shame.
Zane, go ahead. You had a question. I'll relay it.
I don't know if I want to make sure that the question didn't get lost. But Professor Muggs is asking, as a Black man living in Providence, and after conversations with fellow members of his communities in Providence, who are people of color, who are understanding of the issues they and their people face, but feel disengaged from the political process. Is that accurate?
It's mostly because of age. They don't know where to go for resources.
What should young people of color who understand the issues but don't understand how to engage in fixing them? Where, not like I think white communities have to have conversations amongst themselves and need to do better amongst themselves. But I think that Professor Muggs is asking, how can these young communities of color, maybe people with a lot of passion but not a lot of direction, or people who understand the issues and feel them but don't feel engaged, how do those people get involved?
Brooklyn,
not white community.
Right, Brooklyn. The Professor Muggs just sort of rephrased the question, if you will. For young people of color, if they feel disengaged, disassociated, how can they reach out to you, and how can they get involved, and what would you ask them to do?
So you mean young, predominantly Black individuals that are trying to get involved with the movement and kind of don't know what role they can play?
Exactly.
Okay, well, definitely. Like I said, we are in the beginning stages, but we do have an email. It's PROVZ, PVD @gmail.com. You can definitely shoot us an email. You can also contact me on Instagram at The Real Toussaint, TheRealToussaint. What we're doing right now is pretty much just trying to get as many youth voices on the platform. So there's really, nobody out there that can't have their voice heard. If you're a youth, just get connected with us. Whatever your experience is, it's important, it's valued, and it needs to be heard. And we would love for you to share it. So come on out, be ready to listen, be ready to learn, and be ready to speak, because every one of us have a voice, and every one of our voices matters.
Zane, did you catch that?
I did. I'm very appreciative of all of Brooklyn's talking points tonight, and of her being on the show. You and I met at the press conference with Representative Williams, and that's also where I first met Brooklyn and saw her speak. And I was very impressed with her passion and the clarity of her platform then. And I'm happy that she's getting those talking points out on Coalition now. I do want to ask her just one more thing before we sort of say goodbye, and then you, myself, and the professor wrap up the show. I know that Brooklyn has a hand in several upcoming events, including something that's going to be shaping up to be very important on Juneteenth, and including a protest this weekend. So I was wondering, in the spirit of the professor's question, if she wants to run us through the calendar quickly of actual physical events and upcoming actions that people of all ages, but particularly young people, can come out and get involved in. If she could just run us through her quick calendar and then kind of say goodbye.
All right, great. So Zane's asking if you've got a calendar of events coming up in the next few weeks, including Juneteenth. One of the things I'd love you to do, if you can help me out. I understand Juneteenth. There's a lot of folks in my audience who have no idea what that is. Maybe you could explain that and how people can get involved in this calendar of events that are coming up for the month of June that are so important.
Definitely. So our email, we're going to be posting, Survey Monkeys. We're going to definitely be having a lot of different platforms that people can kind of share what they're experiencing. So that's how they'll be able to stay connected with the newsletter on the coming events. But as of now, the events that are coming up in the next week, especially tomorrow, we have a press conference where we will be announcing our official collaboration with Gen Z, We Want to Live, along with Z. So that will be taking place tomorrow at the Providence Public School Department. And then on Sunday, the 14th, we have a protest led by Gen Z, We Want to Live. And that's going to be taking place at Kennedy Plaza, 4:30. Come on out and we'll march. There'll be a march as well as a die-in. And then 2 days after that, on the 16th, we will be having our meeting with the governor. We do have a selected panel that will be speaking, so we'll keep the public updated on that one. And on the 16th, we're also going to be formally inviting the governor to a Juneteenth celebration. So these are definitely the events that we have coming up. The next one that you really need to be at is the protest on the 14th. So this Sunday, come on out, Kennedy Plaza, 4:30. Bring your sneakers. We'll be walking for a while.
Can you explain to folks? This is I have an eclectic audience. I'm not sure a lot of folks are familiar with the importance of Juneteenth. Can you explain to folks?
I bet we have a mostly white audience, to be honest with you. But which would make the Juneteenth explanation. Eclectic is a nice word for white, but I'm not saying there are no black listeners on Coalition Radio. But if Juneteenth could be explained, I think that would be informative. Although I am conscious of us, again, putting the burden on a person of color to explain a tradition that's been around a long time, and I'm as guilty as anyone of that. But yeah, if we could get a quick explanation of Juneteenth, that would be great.
Yeah, Brooklyn, fill us in on why. I mean, we're now Juneteenth is what, about 100? Officially, the date it's recognized now is what, about 155 years old. But explain the relevance of Juneteenth, if you will, please. Oh, did we lose Amanda? Are you still with us?
Brooklyn, are you there?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear. The audience can hear you.
Now.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I was on 1%, but I got my charger plugged in.
Excellent.
I didn't lose you.
There we go.
Excellent.
There we go.
But will you ask me a question?
Sure, absolutely. So Juneteenth is a very important, very, very, very important holiday. It's got significant historical relevance. I don't think a lot of folks in white America understand Juneteenth at all. So maybe if you could just give us a quick reason why Juneteenth is such an important holiday.
Absolutely. Well, Juneteenth is actually informally known also as Freedom Day, and in some places Jubilee Day. Mm-hmm. So it's very important in the Black community. June 19th, I believe, 1865. Yep. Yes, June 19th, 1865. That was when the Emancipation Proclamation was no longer, it was read to slaves, actually. And pretty much, it was explained to them in a way that it's no longer in effect, that it's pretty much, we're no longer slaves, we're freed. And
no, that's I would say, would she posit, or from my perspective, June 19th is almost like an
all
alternative?
Over the country, we come out and we celebrate with our communities, and we make sure that we're
maybe not an alternative, maybe that's not the right word.
Of
equal importance to Independence Day in the mind of
Juneteenth. We're definitely going to be out. We're going to have a big space. We're going to make sure it's all inclusive to everyone, and we're definitely going to be educating the whole people.
No, that's fabulous. I mean, in terms of relevance on a historical day, I mean that is and please correct me where I'm wrong, but my understanding is that really is the July 4th, the true Independence Day of the African American community nationally here in the United States and I think it bears the same relevance and the same poignance and the same reverence that white America reserves for July 4th. Brooklyn, do you think that's a fair statement? Oh,
Did we lose her?
We may have. If she jumps in,
if we get Brooklyn back,
Definitely. And that's exactly why, having these conversations with the community is important, because these kinds of truths get lost, especially when in history, the people who are usually telling the history are the people who won. So it's usually not going to be as offset. It's not going to be as truthful as it should be.
Right.
History is never going to be told by the people who are defeated, even though there's a lot of truth that will never be, reach the surface except through folktale and passing through tradition.
Excellent. Well, give us, Brooklyn, if you would, give us one more, if you will, pronunciation of how folks can reach you and, just a little bit about your organization before we wrap up our show.
Can you repeat your question, Pat? You're going in and out.
Yeah, sure, no worries. So, if you could, we're about to sign off for the night, but before we do, I just want to give you one more opportunity to promote your organization. How folks can reach you and where they can see these. Where they can learn more about the events, how they can get on whatever newsletter chain you've got or whatever email chain you've got, so they can be aware of future events.
Absolutely. You can email us at PROV, PROVZPVD @gmail.com. Again, that's PROV, PROVZPVD @gmail.com. You can also follow me and send me any message on Instagram. I'll try to respond to everybody. My Instagram is at The Real Toussaint. And that's spelled THEREALTOUSSAINT. And I actually just created the Instagram page that's also going to be PROVZPVD. That's PROVZPVD.
Excellent. Well, I know the...
and don't forget to come out on the 14th, Kennedy Park, 4:30.
Absolutely. I wouldn't miss it. I hope you have
absolutely. I know definitely the three of us. Well, I won't speak for Pat, but I know myself and the professor will be around.
Absolutely. Listen, Brooklyn, thank you so much for joining us. I know we're gonna clear up these technical issues this week, and I hope you realize you have an open door here. Anytime you want to join us via Zoom, that would be fabulous. And I was there, by the way, at the press conference, and
I know. I saw you, Mr. Ford.
The nuns called me Mr. Ford. Call me Pat. But let's just say I was profoundly. I'm not one to patronize. Ironically, my family's from Brooklyn. We words are important to us in Brooklyn. They mean a lot. And I will just say this: I was profoundly impressed by your presence, by your elucidation of your points in what was clearly a tense environment. You made your case, you made it well, and you were polite but firm. And folks walked away realizing that things are going to be a little different now, including some folks who might have a half hour before that press conference thought that they were in charge. I think they realized, particularly the guy on the left, who thinks he runs Rhode Island, I think he realizes that there's a few new sheriffs in town, and you're one of them. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Pat, and thank you for the opportunity. We're all a family, and we're hoping to definitely make that clear in Providence and as well as all of Rhode Island.
All right, great. I'm going to turn it over to Zane now and Professor Muggs, and I think they're going to take us away. I'll fade into the background if you want. Zane, I'll let you give us a good night.
All right. Thank you very much, Pat. Brooklyn Toussaint, the real Toussaint on Instagram. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. The leader of Prov Z. Also collaborating with Generation Z, We Want to Live. If you heard that name, that full name, Generation Z, We Want to Live, is an organization founded by Providence High School students who are also very active in organizing and protesting and will be present at that meeting with the governor. So I really want to say thank you to Mr. Pat Ford for having us here, myself and Professor Muggs on the Coalition Network. I want to say thank you to Nairu Ben, aka Nice, Nice, Providence-based rapper and activist, and a big thank you to Amanda Brooklyn Toussaint. Who, I had a similar experience to Pat of having the privilege and the honor of seeing her completely take over a press conference after Speaker Mattiello got totally shut down, and really let people know very succinctly and very passionately what the issues at hand are and what the present moment is. So, Professor Muggs, I don't know about you, but I'm excited about it.
Absolutely. I'd like to thank Pat Ford as well. Thank you very much for having us on this platform and allowing us to get our words out and ask the right people the right questions. So we appreciate it.
Absolutely. And, we're going to have more conversations about Black Lives Matter, anti-racism. We're going to talk about Rhode Island politics. We're going to talk about international politics. Big shouts to Ultimate Palestine and all my people in the occupied West Bank of Palestine. We're going to do some deep dives on, if you think the police are militarized, just wait till you learn how militarized the military is. Let me tell you that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, definitely big thank you to the Coalition Radio listeners. We hope a few more people might catch the rerun. Sorry about the audio issues. Sorry, my hair looks like I just got shocked by a lightning bolt. It's just how I rock. And we look forward to talking to you guys next week with another docket of guests that you may not have been hearing from in the past. That's about to change. So thank you so much. This is Zane Wolfang,
Professor Muggs,
Pat Ford, and this is the Give and Take on the Coalition Radio Network. Thank you very much.
Signing off.
Good night, Pat.
Have a good night, everyone. And guys, we'll catch up tomorrow. We'll go over this. We'll grab the video, the audio and video of this, and we'll put out a great product for folks. Thank you guys for stepping up and bringing this type of conversation to perhaps an arena that might need, well, let's just leave it this way, a heavy dose of give and take. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much, Pat. Have a good night. Good night, Coalition Radio listeners.